Alright everyone, it's time for the Occult, video number 385. I'm a friggin' wizard. I just wanted to point that out to people. Magic is mine. Here's my thoughts on this. Part of it has to do simply with human understanding. Understanding how people work, how systems work, etc. Magic is really intertwined at the end of the day with science. When we get the typical characteristics of a wizard, like in Hollywood or something, what is it? Old dude, big long bushy beard, he's got a pointy hat and stars on his robe and stuff like that. That's actually kind of apt because it is virtually how they would have appeared, some court alchemist back during the Renaissance. They would have had all of the sparkly apparel and the strange garb. They would have wanted to look unique, partially because many of them were counterfeiters and they wanted a job. Hey, in the royal court, they're too fucking stupid to know that this alloy that's made mainly with iron and nickel and things like that isn't actually pure silver. It passes for the real thing. It's not useful for the real thing in certain applications, but I think I can hoof it. They had wands, for example, where they could make gold appear in the cauldron when they were boiling the ingredients. The wand that they used for stirring had a wax plug on the bottom, so there was a little bit of gold inside. When you put it into the cauldron, it's a little bit of trickery, gold would fall out. A little bit of being a wizard is nothing more than understanding human systems and how people perceive reality. If you can judge how people generally perceive reality, and you can judge how they generally react to the reality around them, and if you have the capability of bending that reality to make them conform to it in that predictable way, it brings about a form of control. A lot of it is linguistic, so why do you think that I try to instruct people to pay close attention to language on a regular basis? Do you know where the term spell, like as in magical spell, comes from? It comes from the concept of simply spelling something out, literally an incantation. That's the source. A grimoire, a book of magic, typically involving demonic rituals or bric-a-brac works later on like the Petit Albert. Where does that term come from? It comes from grammar. It comes from language. Human language is the most potent force, other than maybe technology at this point, and still communicative. It still relies upon that same human language framework that we know of. This is why propaganda involves sloganeering. Imagery also helps, especially when the two are overlapped, it amplifies both. The way in which you refer to the world in linguistic terms is of import, not just for magical purposes, but beyond that as well. Now, most of the modern day magicians, so to speak, the modern day witches and wizards, those that are more authentic, that have this human understanding, use it for evil. Most of them want to convince you to be a lemming slave at this point and live in a pod or something like that. I try to convince people of the opposite, that I believe that delving truly into human spirituality and the occult requires intelligence. Intelligence requires critical thinking and awareness. It doesn't dwell in ignorance. That's why I've also said separately, mainline religion is for the masses. Most people won't get much out of the occult as far as a practice. They have neither the time nor the interest to read all of the books that they'll need to read, to do the deep thinking that they wish to do the meditating in nature and upon nature thing, or to even comprehend the basic principles of the occult, as above, so below, etc., etc. They're more interested, if they're in magic at all, in simply reading a couple of candle spell books and then pretending that that makes them a witch or something like that. For them, probably better just to join a mainline religion. You're getting a kernel of mysticism anyway. There's a mystic tradition in all mainline religions, especially Hinduism, I would point out, and that'll give you more fulfillment. Or just not having a religion. You don't have any particular beliefs at all. You're a hardline atheist. Don't bother wasting your time with the spiritual. You're not interested in it, so don't bother. Go and do something positive. Plant a tree or something. There are different types of people in the world. We also have to dwell briefly upon the concept that people are not actually equal. They should be treated equally under the law. They should endeavor to treat one another with deference and equality insofar as they're capable of doing so. At the end of the day, though, pragmatically speaking, the world is effectively a quasi-meritocracy, unless you have an authoritarian system perverting that for its own aims, which is actually worse, and people are not all the same. Some people are effectively born into an occult mentality. My own personality, for example, does not allow me to think of the spiritual world in the more rudimentary fashion. I can't think of it in the hierarchical, strictly religious fashion, and I've had too many spiritual experiences to be irreligious in the sense of extending to hardline atheism, anti-spirituality, total disbelief. My rejection of organized religion is more because I'm on the spiritual end as opposed to a lack thereof. But I am a wizard in the most literal sense, because I delve into these things. And some of you are effectively wizards and witches as well. Part of it is just a frame of mind and a frame of reference with which you analyze the world. You can use it for good, you can use it for ill. It's sort of like being a hypnotist. You could potentially misuse that particular skill on people that are affected by it, and that's not everyone, to great harm to them. There are books actually from about 100 years ago that detail all of those forms of harm, although they tend to meander off into the fire and brimstone side of things and say, well, it will open up portals to demons in your mind. Satan will take your soul if you go to see the hypnotist. That's probably not going to happen. But it can be used for ill, to manipulate people psychologically. Likewise, it can be used to heal people's mental conditions. It can be used to treat mental illnesses in some cases, again, if the person is susceptible to suggestion. Very interesting world that we live in, isn't it? And by the way, as above, so below. If you see the convolutions of this world, and I will be talking about this in a future occult video, just think that the above is a reflection of the below as much as the below is a reflection of the above. In such a case, if you have any spiritual beliefs at all, and that moniker almost universally applies, it even applies to the science. You look at particles and you break them down into smaller and smaller components, they start to look a little bit like solar systems that are much more big than those particles are. I have a feeling this repeats ad nauseum in both directions forever, but of course, we can't see far enough or small enough to judge that to be the case. It just happens to hold true in every observation we've made thus far for thousands of years of investigating such things. Very interesting. That's about all. Peace out.